Something I've never really done on this channel is to tell my own personal story. And I've been a little nervous to do that for a number of reasons, but today I'm doing it. Today I'm telling you exactly why I talk about narcissistic abuse all the time, how I got here, and what makes me keep going. So let's get started. My name's Angie Atkinson, and on this channel I offer free daily video coaching to help you discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships. I like to call it toxic relationship rehab. Does that sound good to you? If so, hit that subscribe button and let's get going. Just a quick side note before you watch this video. As I'm editing it, I realize that I have left out a lot of details. I would also like you to consider that every situation is different, that there are a lot of subtle issues when it comes to dealing with a narcissist. And so while some of these things that I'm about to share with you might sound small and petty, understand those two things. There are more details than are being stated here, and that sometimes the subtle abuse is the kind that people miss. And that this is basically a lifetime story condensed down to less than 20 minutes. So keep that in mind as well. There are so many details that I'm just not able to include here in the interest of time and humiliation. You know that when you're dealing with a narcissist, they can say 2 words and throw you off. They can look at you across the room and you'll know you're in trouble when you get home. I want you to remember that when you're watching this video, and understand there are subtleties that you may or may not understand as you watch. Understand that I've only chosen to share the parts of the story with you that I felt comfortable telling, and I hope that you understand and respect that. There were a lot of other elements involved, especially in the marriage and also in the other story that I'm going to tell today. So please keep that in mind as you watch. Thank you. A lot of people have asked me, why do you write about narcissism and toxic relationships so often? And as someone who has been involved in narcissistic relationships in my life and survived, I feel compelled to share my stories, to share my experiences, at least to the extent that they can help you guys, help my viewers, help my readers, help my people, my tribe. I don't usually tell my story, and I'm a little anxious about doing so, as I said at the beginning of this video, but as a journalist and a seasoned researcher, and now as a certified life coach, I feel like it's going to help. It is in my nature to learn about things that concern me. I've always done it. I've been working on healing myself and on detoxifying my life. This has manifested itself in many ways. First, with the dismissal of a particularly toxic family relationship I was stuck in for way too long. While this may have been a significant change in my life, it isn't one you can see when I walk down the street. You know what I'm saying? Just like the psychological and emotional injuries that are a result of being in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, you can't really tell that a person is stuck in a narcissistic relationship unless you happen to be a personal witness to the behavior of the narcissist involved, right? So why am I always talking about narcissistic abuse and how to recover from it? Why do I keep talking about it now? As you know, it's because I'm a survivor myself. Quite honestly, I feel like the universe planted this particular kind of abuse in my front yard for a reason. A lot of people have asked me to tell my story, and I've never fully done so before, but now I think it's time. So here's how it happened. It's a long and convoluted story, but I'm going to try to make it understandable and succinct for you today, okay? Growing up, I never really understood that my feelings and my thoughts were valid, and this was because I was taught that they weren't. There was a significant strain in the relationship with my mother, starting about the time I stood up and stated my own opinions, which inevitably were not her opinions. This wasn't acceptable, and she let me know it in no uncertain terms. Once she hissed at me that she wished she'd aborted me when she had the chance. Another time she said she should have killed me when I was a baby. This all started probably around the time I was 12. Before that, I knew she was tough, and I knew that she was way more strict than other moms that I knew, but I didn't fully grasp the way that she had invalidated, minimized, and scared me into submission. I remember walking home from school with a feeling of absolute dread, my stomach churning and turning, my head filled with images of what would happen when I told her, or when she found out, about whatever thing it was that I had done or not done that she would be angry about. One time, after an evening of holiday shopping, she accused me of looking inside the bag that contained a gift. I'm here to tell you right now, I never looked in that bag, okay? But she never believed me. And in fact, I got punished for it pretty severely. And you know what I thought, right? Gosh, I just should have looked in the damn bag. At least then the punishment would be for something I'd actually done. When I was 18, she became so disgusted and angry with me that I felt like I needed to run away. She had punished me. I was still in high school. She had punished me in an extreme way, physically, one too many times. And I was done. A friend's mother agreed to let me stay at her house for the rest of my senior year of high school, and then I planned to get a job. But When my mother found out, she begged me to stay, and she promised not to touch me again so that, I would stay. And then she said I could have my freedom. Well, of course, on the flip side, she also said that I could no longer eat the food in her house or use the facilities, the showers and things like that. And she said that if she could, she'd prevent me from even walking on her floors. But she didn't want anyone to think her daughter had run away or moved out of her house. It would make her look pretty bad if I didn't go to college, right? So I stayed. But I told her if she ever physically punished me again, she'd never see me again. My freshman year in college, I acted like a complete idiot. I'm not gonna lie to you. I started drinking, I partied, I went crazy. And it was all a result of having been so strictly under her thumb for so many years. Eventually, I got my life together, and shortly after that, I met the man who would become my first husband. While he was the first person I married, I know now that he was not the first narcissist I dated. This one, though, he was a tough one. He was one of the insta-love variety, claiming to love me days after meeting and asking me to marry him just weeks after we'd been together. I stupidly did marry him after only 5 months together, and 3 of those months we actually lived in the same apartment together. I did not invite most of my family to the wedding. Part of me didn't even feel like it was a real wedding somehow, and yet it was. I remember standing there at the altar with his family and 1 or 2 members of mine, thinking, holy crap, I need to get the hell out of here. I could barely hear the minister as he was asking me to repeat my vows because my head was full of the sound of my own silent screams. They sounded like, run! Y'all know what I'm talking about, don't you? But I pushed through like a good little supply would, and thus began the toxic marriage. Literally 2 days after I managed to say, I do, I found out that I was pregnant with my oldest child. I was 21 years old at the time, and my mother had disowned me because I had gotten married behind her back. A move that I admit was cowardly, but one that had happened because I knew she would not support it, and the fact that she would actively oppose it and make it really hard for me. Well, my ex-husband was what you might call a combo deal, part overt, part covert narcissist. So the sex initially was amazing, but within weeks of being together, it dropped to rarely happening, and his interest in me all but disappeared, and I began to worry that something was really wrong with me. I started researching relationships at that time, and this was before we all had the internet, so I did my research at the library, and I wanted to know how to be sexier for him, and how to make him want me, and how to be a better wife, because obviously I was doing a lot of things wrong, right? Well, no matter what I did, he didn't respond the way that I thought he would. After my pregnancy started to actually show, he wouldn't touch me for the rest of the pregnancy, and he thought I was disgusting, and he told me so. I never felt quite so ugly in my entire life, though the feeling of being unlovable was quite familiar to me. My journals from this time in my life alternated between dark stream of consciousness and misery to this is how I'm going to change my life for the better. I researched everything I could find about human attraction and how to make myself into the perfect woman for him, but of course it would never work, and after nearly 3 years I just gave up. I left him when my son was 16 months old and began the journey of being a single mom. I was scared to death, but I kept telling myself that I'd rather be alone than unhappy. It was my mantra. There was a song around that time by Whitney Houston where she said those words, I'd rather be alone than unhappy, and it really stuck in my head. I had no way to leave without help at that time, so I asked my mother, who, to her credit, did come to my rescue. She arranged to have me stay at a friend's mother's home who had recently gone into a nursing home. The family didn't want to leave the house empty because it wasn't the best neighborhood, so my son and I had a temporary place to live for next to nothing. But the help came with conditions, of course. My mother expected me to attend church every week with her and basically do whatever she told me to do in the meantime. I, of course, obliged because it was my only option at the time to be free. I remember the first night away from my ex. While I was in tears and feeling completely devastated, my mother asked me to go to a bowling party, which only other couples plan to go to. So there I was, one half of a now broken couple, hanging out with all of the other couples. I felt totally awful and I could not stop crying. Instead of comforting me, my mother got really angry and told me that I needed to suck it up and that I was only in pain because of the choices I have made. She kept repeating that phrase to me. These are the choices that you have made. 4 years later, I met Bill, my current husband, and after our second and third children were born, and several years of a controlling, guilt and obligation-fueled relationship with my mother, I decided to stand up for myself. And when she ruined my plans to be the first person to show our kids the beach, that's where all of the drama started. The big drama that eventually led to my going no contact. The oldest, my oldest child, and the only one she'd ever really had a relationship with, and that continues to be true to this day, had been invited to go to California to visit my brother with her that summer. Well, of course I agreed because I want my kids to have experiences. But when I agreed, I said, please make it after the vacation that my husband and I have planned because And I did give her the dates because this was the first time that we had ever been able to afford a family vacation that was a real vacation. And I really wanted to be the first one to show the kids the beach for the first time. And my oldest son was 12 at the time. A couple of weeks after that happened, as I was getting the kids out the door for school and my husband out the door for work, I got a phone call in a rush. She said, we're going to California on this date and we need to buy the plane tickets right now. Will this date work? And I said, well, could you please wait until I finish getting everyone out the door so I can check my calendar, because I can't remember the dates of our vacation right now. But she pushed me saying, I have to know right now. I have to know right now. So I asked my husband what he thought. And he said, sure, as long as it's after our vacation. So I said that to her. And I said, you know, I don't remember our dates, but as long as those are after the dates I gave you, that's fine. And she said, oh, this will be fine. This will be fine. It'll work just fine. Well, I got everyone out the door, and a few minutes later, I rushed to my office to check my calendar. It turned out that she had planned her vacation for the same week, actually the week before my vacation was planned. So I immediately called her and I said, listen, those dates aren't going to work because it's the same week. And I explained why, blah, blah, blah. Well, of course, she started screaming at me, and she said I was just being difficult and that it didn't matter that I was only trying to ruin her trip, that I was trying to make everything hard and it had nothing to do with me wanting to show my children the beach. None of that was true, but it didn't matter because she hung up on me, and a while later my dad called and told me what a terrible daughter I was and how I'd really hurt my mother. I was beside myself and I told him exactly what I thought about that statement. That was when he told me he never really liked me and he tolerated me only for her. That was the beginning of the end of my relationship with my parents. There was more drama over the following weeks, and I allowed my son to go on vacation and also to camp with her that summer, again, to avoid taking opportunities away from my child. But I had stopped talking to her on a regular basis at that point, and instinctively, without even knowing what I was doing, I had gone low contact. Still, I didn't want to take away the opportunities that she was offering my oldest child, and so I remained in contact with her about him only. So one day, after a difficult phone call with my doctor's office, which left me in tears, there was a knock on my door. There stood a kind young social worker from CPS, Child Protective Services, who stated that she was there to investigate a report of neglect. Someone had called Child Protective Services and claimed that my home was filthy and that my children were not being fed. The CPS worker came in and talked to me, talked to my husband, and interviewed our children. We showed her around our home and even inside our garage and our bedrooms. We showed her the food in our pantry and our fridge and offered up proof that in fact, we were involved with our children and we took care of our family. She decided the complaint was bunk and she closed the case that day, which she did. She said that sometimes people called CPS when they were angry at someone and wondered if that was what was happening to us. So I couldn't think of anyone who would do that to us at that point, believe it or not. And in fact, it never even crossed my mind that my mother would be the person to do that to my family. But as the lady was leaving, out of the blue, I said, hey, could I look at the complaint? She obliged, and as I read it, I came across several phrases that were very familiar to me, and they helped me realize that it was in fact my mother because, you know, as the CPS people took the notes down, they wrote down exactly what the person who called said. I knew she had been involved in this at this point. I knew because of the language that she had used and that, you know, the words that she put together. It was undeniable. I was devastated. But at that exact moment, something happened inside me. All sense of obligation and guilt about her went away. The invisible cord that connected me to her, I felt it snap inside me. And at that moment, I lost all feeling for her. Maybe it was survival kicking in, but somehow I knew what I had to do. I picked up the phone and I called her and I told her that I knew what she had done. I told her I was finished with her and that she could never call me again. She screamed at me and she played the victim, and that would be her MO. That would become her MO for months to come, and probably still is. I don't know, because I'm no contact now. She told me to call my brother. I ignored her and hung up. My brother called me moments later and claimed he'd made the call. I reminded him that the person who had made the call had talked about things in my house that my brother had never seen. He hadn't been in my house for many years, and somehow I stupidly believed that he and I understood each other. We had a relationship, I thought. He lived in a different state at the time. He had been in the military. It was then that I realized that my mother had roped him into her scheme, and it was then that I went no contact with both of them that day. Truthfully, because of the insidious nature of narcissistic abuse, I didn't realize what I was dealing with at first. But when I started to do the research, as we journalists typically do, I began to realize that I had been dealing with someone who seemed to have narcissistic personality disorder. I did what I do. I learned as much as I could about it, and it turned out that ending contact with the toxic person in my life was the best thing I could have done for myself. There was even a name for it. Going no contact. What my story ultimately comes down to is that it was my own abuse that led me to you. It was my own abuse that led me to try to make a difference in the world for other people so that they either didn't have to suffer the same abuse, or so that they could maybe get away from it and learn to do better for themselves the way that I have. What I try to provide with my videos is I try to provide information that I needed when I was going through what you're going through now. I try to provide a support group, a family, and information that is real and stated in a way that you can understand, even if you're stressed out and depressed and angry and sad and scared, because I've been there and I've done that. That's what I'm here for. I'll give you more details on all the technical parts of the career stuff later, but that's what I'm here for. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns, things you want to talk about? Let's have the question of the day. And the question of the day is, have you been there? Have you done that? Did you feel me? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. All right, that's all I've got for you right now. Thanks so much for being a part of my day and a part of my life. And hey, thanks for letting me be a part of yours. It really does mean a lot to me. I'll see you soon. It's my mission to teach others what I know to be true. You really can create the life you want. Take care of your body. Take care of your soul. Nurture the real you and introduce him or her to the world. Be comfortable in your own skin and in your place in this world. Take your spot, take it now, and the universe will take its cue from you. You feel me? If so, subscribe to my channel. Let's get it done together.